so let us jump in. Beautiful. So we are now entering our pitching workshop, and before we do that, I'd just like to share, because pitching is typically put into the startup context, right? The startup context of, here I am, I'm in front of an investor and I want to pitch my company. But before we get into it, I want to make it super clear that pitching is literally everywhere. So pitching can look like you pitching who you are to your employer, right, to get your position. Pitching can look like there you are inside a corporation, inside a team, and you've got to pitch your idea. You've got to pitch your vision that you want to see for the team. Obviously, it can also look like you creating a new company, creating a new vision, and bringing that to the world. So wherever you are listening from, I feel super privileged to be here sharing with you the technology, the framework we use to conduct pitching. And it's not just that. We find that as much as the pitching seems like it's about what we are saying, it's actually about all the work you do to get the pitch right. That sharpens your company, right? That turns your rough diamond into something sparkly and polished. And during the session, I'll also be inviting one of our commercial partners and our guest here, Carissa Breen, who will be speaking about how pitching works for you, your brand, and potentially your team. So to start off, I want to share something a little bit about my personal history for why I resonate so much with the world of pitching. And I was the type who definitely did not consider myself a salesperson or how to pitch. One of my early jobs back when I was studying was in a call center. So we would sit there and something like 60 calls, 100 calls per hour, we just do that over and over again. And I vividly remember sitting there one time and my screen shut off and it logged me out. And what it is it's called the walk of shame, back there. If you are not making enough sales, they don't talk to you. They literally just see your stats come off and it closes your computer and you pick up all your things and you walk out of the room, right? Now, you know that person isn't going to the bathroom because they packed up all of their things and, that's just not what you do. And, it was hugely humiliating and it was, if anything, it reinforced that I shouldn't be, someone who is out pitching to the world. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to then sit down with the top people, the salespeople in the organization, and I listened intently. What were they doing? What were they not doing? And it took me about 12 months. I was there for approximately 3 years. At the end, I came out raising more than $750,000, working part-time here for charities, for businesses, and they had a ranking system, was easily one of the top performers there. So I share that with you because you may be in your seat thinking, okay, I don't know how to pitch, I've never done it before, but this was my journey and my experience, that by understanding the mechanics of pitching, and we're going to go through our 4-piece pitching framework, again, that we use with our dozens of startups to help them refine their company. And yeah, my hope for you is that you can start, no matter where you are, start on your training wheels and or advance and master your ability to pitch. So I'd like to introduce our Venture Idea Canvas. This is what we go through with our companies in the early stage to make sure that they are picking up a seed and not a stone, right, before they plant it. Because think about it, as a startup, people are foregoing a lot of money in the market and they're putting in their time, their energy. And if you don't first see that you've got a seed or a stone, then when you go and water it, when you bring the sunlight in, when you put the fertilizer, you may find that you're actually not on something that can scale at all, right? In fact, what is worse is sometimes you have something that grows, but it grows into a small company that is quite limited and not scalable. And therefore, the expected return is not so much. So this is why this conversation is very important. But what we will be doing today is I will be walking you through these 4 areas, this 4-piece pitching framework that you guys can take, literally copy and paste into what you're going to present to the judges this afternoon. But my long-term hope is that you would use it in your life, again, whether that is in a team environment, whether that's in a corporate environment, whether that is for your own startup. So what is the 4-piece pitching framework? We are going to go through avatars, who you are going to be talking to, the burning pain that they experience, thirdly, the landscape that you are pitching it in, and then finally, your value proposition and your solution. But I'm going to start with the first one, obviously, on avatars. So the thing that we observe a lot of people make a big mistake in is that they jump straight to a target market when they are trying to define their avatar, right? So what does this look like? This looks like the team coming together, trying to think about the solution and going, let's target 15 to 65-year-old females, right? Or 30 to 60-year-old males who have a car. When you sit down with someone and ask them to imagine that, and then you go and try to work out what their life is like, it's literally impossible for your brain, because your brain can't imagine 7 million people in it, right? We can barely juggle between 3 to 7 things in our heads. So what we do is we start off with an avatar, right? An avatar, you want to think about somebody that you know or know of. So it might be your friend's mother who works as a marketing officer in Coca-Cola, right? That would be an avatar. Now, it's fine that you do not know 100% about that person, right? We can imagine things here. We can hypothesize a little bit. And this is exactly why we move from an avatar to a persona. You can somewhat guess what happens there. When we go out and talk to people who we think are our avatar, and we validate that that person is real with all those assumptions, then we turn them into a persona. Yeah? So finally, we then use the data we have there. In our startup program, in our accelerator, what we do is we get people to identify these personas and actually get letters of intent or founding customers, so we know that there is a demand for the solution before they go and invest further into it. And what we then get them to do is think, if we know that these people are real, now that we are going to either market or build our product for these people, how can we extrapolate them to a group of people? So, as I mentioned, it's an individual, and then at the end, we're mapping it to a group of people. And this we have found is an effective way to get the seed right first, and then connect it to a larger group of people. So, to be honest, this is quite simple, but even in working with dozens of startups per month, we see time and time again, many cannot even answer the exact person or even group of people that they are serving. And what it leads to is investing so much money on building these features and functions that literally serve nobody. Let me move into the second phase now, which is about a burning pain. So there we are. We have this avatar now in our minds. We have your auntie, your uncle, or the person that you're working with, or your boss. And we want to start understanding their world. We put ourselves in their shoes, and we're thinking, how can I make a difference to this person in their life? The next mistake that we find here is that people start working on the problem rather thinking about a burning pain. Now, what's the difference? It sounds so similar, right? Well, with a problem, we typically find this issue that people like to play God. What do we mean? it's like if you go to someone who has a gambling problem and say, hey, you've got a gambling problem, we know that many of them would initially deny it and say, no, I have no problem, I'm enjoying my time, right? So with the problem, we are asserting ourselves as if everybody knows the information that we know and everybody's willing to accept that. And when you go and give these solutions to your problems to those people, they reject it, they resist it, and then we wonder why it doesn't get taken up in the market, right? So what we recommend you do is to imagine your avatar, right? Write them down, get really clear. Write down as much as you know about them, by the way. Write down where they eat, where they sleep, what they do in the morning, you know, how big their family is, and so on and so forth. But then we go into their pain. What things are they willing to admit are a problem, right? What things do they know they want to solve and they're hungry to go out and, you know, meet that? And the more that we can map that into an experience, or even better, sort of an advanced thing would be mapping it into behavioral triggers. Things that, once that happens, they literally go seeking for a solution, you know, to their pain. So this is what we mean about your burning pain. And just to recap, getting a really clear idea of who you're serving, and then mapping out these are the pains that they experience. The last thing to share about that is one of the notorious or biggest investors in the world, Peter Thiel, talks about whether your burning pain is in the top priority of your customer anyway. So it might be a valid pain, but if it's not something that is on top of mind, then they're going to push it down their value list and they'll never get to it anyway. If it comes to exchanging money, you know, then they're not going to bother. Next, I'd like to move on to landscape, because what I noticed in my journey with a lot of sales books, marketing gurus, etc., is we tend to take our product and we put it in a little box and we try to maximize all of the great things about it. But we miss that when an observer, when a customer comes in, they're not only looking at our box, they're looking at all the other boxes around it, right? So if you have a Gucci handbag, right, you might feel so special and everything, but if there's another 20 people side by side with you, all holding a Gucci handbag, all of a sudden you don't seem so special or flashy, right? So this is the idea of landscape. We want to be aware of our surroundings, yeah? And one simple thing, if you get anything out of this presentation, this is the thing that I do not want to hear you say when you go and talk to an investor or you're pitching your idea, which is that there is no competition, right? It immediately disqualifies you because you know that those people haven't really done the real research, yeah? And let me now give you a more tangible example, because there's a difference between indirect and direct competition or players in a market. The direct ones are so easy. If we want to build a pool, right? If a family wants to build a pool, then who are the competitors? Well, you have Pool Builder A, Pool Builder B, and you have things like Blue Haven or Clark Rubber and all of these other companies, right? Very simple. And often startups or entrepreneurs will understand this and they'll get that clear. Oh, these people they've got exactly the same product as us at a different price, and it's easy to compare. However, the competitor for a swimming pool indirectly is Disneyland, right? Why Disneyland? Well, here you've got a family. They've got $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. They've got summer, and they want to entertain their family. They want to have a great time. They want to have memories. Their kids are growing up. And what are they going to do? They can choose to spend it on a pool and invest, and long term they get to experience, you know, barbecues and great times for however many years, or they are going to take their whole family to Disneyland and have, you know, a quite intense, memorable experience. So this is a great example of a type of alternative, indirect competitors, if you like, to you know, a certain solution or a product. And this is the one we invite you to look at, because if you can really clearly identify that your product solves a problem better than the indirect and direct options, then that's when you're starting to refine that diamond in the rough into something much more clear, refined, and is easy to understand. Fantastic. So avatars, burning pain, landscape, and finally we are on the value proposition. So this one is the one that I pretty much don't need to even share with you about, because this is where everybody goes at the step one anyway. So we know that we should be talking about the benefits of our solution, how we solve the problem, and so on. But let me give you an example, because the issue with this is not that you don't know how to do it. I know that you know how to do it. The issue is that we try to do this by itself, and it actually, by trying to present all the benefits alone, it can actually hinder the uptake of your solution. Let me give you a really good example. So let's take Uber as you know, it's something quite familiar to all of us. So if I'm pitching Uber and I say, hey, there's this cool app where you can call a new type of taxi and it's cheaper, it's cheaper. How cool is it that you'll save money, right? It's convenient. You just pick it up and you can just use it. And you know, it remembers all your receipts. Use Uber, guys, use Uber. Just download it now, just go onto the App Store, right? So even though we know all of those benefits, there's something missing, right? Not only that, this is where the whole type of pushy salesperson, you're trying to get me to do something, you know, vibe starts to come out. So let me now compare that to our 4-piece pitching framework, right? And an analogy I like to give is that we want to paint the empty box and then we want to fill it. I'll give you the example and come back to that. So if those of you who know the original story of Uber, there were these guys going to this startup conference and they had these ideas going, why on earth do I have to sit there and why do I have to sit there with all my luggage and I have to try to call a taxi and it's so hard and sometimes there's no taxi. So, sorry, one step back. So the avatars are these people who are busy, who are entrepreneurs or busy people, and they value their time. Their burning pain is they have to sit there with all of their luggage and they have to wait for a taxi to come, and sometimes it never comes. They say, oh, I'm going to be there in 5 minutes, and 15 minutes later they're still wondering, and they have this uncertainty whether they're going to make it to their business meeting, right? And then we have the landscape. Well, I can use a taxi. Yeah, that's one option. I could use public transport, but come on, I'm not going to lug all of my luggage over there. And then I've also got a black cab service, but then I'm paying through the roof, and you know it's not economical. So imagine in the midst of that I can actually call an Uber. I can get a fleet of people willing to drive, and I'm going to call them on my app. I'm going to see how far they are. Are they 2 minutes away or 5 minutes away? And reliably they show up, right? I also know how much my fare is going to be, and at the end I have a clear log and I can put it into my accounting, right? So obviously, you know, I don't have to do much work to turn Uber into something that is valuable, but I do want you to see the difference between trying to pitch just a value proposition, just the benefits, compared to going through the 4-piece pitching framework, and it gives the context to why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah? Fantastic. So, and you know, just coming back to what I said, just notice that in these 3 pieces, there is no mention of my solution. Yeah, let me say that again. In avatars, burning pain, and landscape, we don't mention our solution. And this is what I mean by drawing the outline of the box, but not filling it till the end. So the last mistake we see people make is people jump straight to their solution as if it's all about them and their great work they've done, whereas the pitches we find very exciting, stimulating, and really hook you are the ones that talk about the customer, their problems, the landscape. They don't even mention themselves until the very end, and then the whole thing makes sense. Fantastic. So, I would like to introduce one of our commercial partners, Carissa Breen. She is otherwise known as KB, and she runs a communications and PR agency which is committed to helping startups and companies get their message out there. But in particular, she's an ex-techie herself. She runs startups. She's on the board of many others. And she found this pain point that people doing very technically complex solutions, they can't communicate their value proposition, and then their work ends up going to waste. So as you can see, it doesn't take much stretch of the imagination to see why we have a strategic alliance with her, because she's out in the world bridging, these technical solutions and turning them into real practical solutions that are getting taken up in society. And so she does everything from press releases, internal marketing, and external PR, and works with from billion-dollar companies all the way down to people starting billion-dollar companies, startups. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Carissa.
Aria mentioned people call me KB a lot. When I was working in technology before I started my own firm, a lot of people forgot my name. My name's Carissa, and even though my mum spent 9 months thinking of a unique name, no one could remember it, so I've shortened it to KB, but it's really stuck with me. It's really helped build my brand. So today I want to talk more about personal branding, what you can actually start doing to propel your business forward, what it's done for me, and things that you can start implementing is when you leave the room today. So I have to scroll, so bear with me. So I'm guessing everyone in this room knows who this is. But the interesting question is, how or why do you know who this guy is? Now, I want to use Steve Jobs today as a really good example because he is a protege of personal branding. And he was at the coalface driving Apple. And I want to talk more about how he's propelled that forward and a little bit more about my journey as well. Perfect. Okay, so personal branding, there's a little bit of a buzzword at the moment, but the clinical definition, this has been around for a while. And it's actually started with Napoleon Hill in the 1930s, Tom Peters in the 90s, and even Coco Chanel. So it's been around for a long time. It's not a new thing. It's just that we're now in a digital era and we've ushered into a new approach with social media and digital platforms. So growing up, my mum taught me to always dress to success. She said, you never know who you're ever going to run into in the street, which then created a core belief for me. So I internalized that belief, and it's really worked for me today and how I hold and carry myself. And what that's done for me, it's conditioned me as a young child, growing up to what I'm doing now, to really help build my personal brand, which helps build my business brand as well. The thing about building a brand, though, a lot of, everyone's on social media and Instagram and platforms like that, it actually it transfers also outside of digital as well. I meet a lot of people, sometimes who they are digitally is not who they are when you meet them in person. So make sure that that's coherent and there's no disconnect there. Perfect. I take my brand really seriously, and it's almost kind of blurred now between my personal and my professional brand, simply because my company is named after me. Yes, I have other people that work for me as well, but it's something that you can make that really effective because I am who I am, and I am leading that at the coalface of my company. And personal branding now is pretty much my life, so I have to accept that, and it's helped me stem from my personal brand into my company's success today. One thing I noticed about people's brands, and some example like Steve Jobs, you want to be authentic. And that's hard because traditionally speaking, a lot of people find that being who they are is something that they're uncomfortable with. And you never want to be artificial because people can really read straight through that and people can see that. So how I sort of started all of this, and Aria mentioned it before about the call center thing. I started off in sales. I was working in a large financial institution and I moved into sales. I've never done sales in my life. And I was just told to start selling and pitching the company, and I'd never done it before. So I thought there must be another way on how I can get people to come to me. And that's really when the seed of the personal branding started and how I started doing what I'm doing now. I started writing a blog. Admittedly, it was quite bad. But what I did was that there's a couple of things in there. One, I started writing a blog around people and technology, in particular cybersecurity, which is my original background. But the thing that I was doing was making sure that I was consistent, and I kept doing it. A lot of people complain at me, especially tech startups who are, they're really keen to get going and build their company. But you have to be consistent with doing this. Perfect. Okay. Oh, I didn't scroll past that. I apologize. Okay, so I'll talk about the why and a few other things that it's done for me. So with building the brand and the pitching side of things, it's helped me create inbound sales. I have built my business purely on inbound sales. I've never done an outbound call, and I've never actually approached someone for a sale. And that's important because I really didn't like sales. As Ari mentioned before, it can be quite daunting. And I know when you're a salesperson, you're put in the pressure cooker to deliver, especially when it's your own company, you actually need to make the money. So if you start creating your brand, it'll pay dividends over time, which I'll get to in a little bit later. What it's also meant as well, it creates a shorter sales cycle. So when people are coming to you for your product or your service, it means that they're warm, they're pre-sold. They know what you do, they know what you're about. It also helps with the qualifying process as well. The last thing you really want to do is spend 6 months on a deal and the person says no. So it helps qualify in or out. So if someone doesn't like me, they're not going to approach me. And that's fine. And I'm okay with that because it means that when I'm doing the sales, it's quicker. And it also means that when you're selling and you're pitching, it's a lot warmer than when you're going in cold. What building a brand also does is engenders trust. In Australia, trust is everything and so is loyalty. This is also, by building my brand, it's enabled me to get overseas clients. And the reason for that I believe, has really been because I do a lot of video blogging, and the clients can see me. I can't hide. I'm not fabricated. I'm not fake. I am who I am. They know what my company does and the mandate that I foster as a business. Building a brand as well can also get you to do a number of speaking engagements. The speaking engagements really creates a higher profile. When people know who you are, example Steve Jobs, people obviously will take to you and then they want to be associated with you. And I've just lost my place. The difficulty of this, it can be a double-edged sword. So I know I mentioned before that my personal and my professional life is kind of blended. You do need to make that demarcation between them, but that's something that is up to you, and it depends on how far you want to take this. Cool. Oh, actually, let's go back here. Okay, so I'm a why person. If I don't know why, I won't do something. I was really bad in school, and the teacher would tell me to do something, and I never really did it because I wanted to know why. So I explained to you about why this is important. Because behaviorally speaking and traditionally speaking, people want to deal with people at the end of the day. People don't want to deal with faceless companies. That's why companies do have brand ambassadors. And society wants to connect emotionally with a face. And that's why I intentionally named my company after me. And that's why I'm at the coalface of the company, because people relate to me. So if you research sociology, consumer buying, behavioral science, it'll explain that. And it'll talk to you about how people now are interacting with brands and why they want to feel connected to someone. I'll give you an example. Blockbuster back in the day, when they thought that they were safe. One of the things that's changed now with Netflix, it's changed how we actually engage. Back in the day, you'd have to drive down to the store, you'd have to get the DVD, you had to return it. If it was late, you got charged a late fee. But now, people are binge watching. They're not waiting a week for the next show to come out. They're actually just sitting there for like 8 hours on the couch and just watching it. So behaviorally speaking, it's changed. And that's why personal branding is important in today's society. Now, I already mentioned before, so I've got a background in technology. A big reason why I created my company is that I see a lot of tech founders, from startup all the way up to large enterprises. The tech is great, but to be really world-class at doing this is understanding people. Because if you understand people, you understand how they work and how they tick, and then you can reverse engineer it to really market your business and market yourself. That's one of the biggest problems that I see, is great tech, but the guys can't understand how to market that effectively and get those clients. Okay. Now, building a brand is kind of like going to the gym. You've got to keep going to the gym. You get fit, but you've got to maintain it. One of the common questions that I ask is, if I build a brand, then what happens? You've actually got to keep doing it. You've got to keep staying relevant. There's a reason why large companies like McDonald's, IBM, etc. spend millions of dollars on marketing and branding, is to stay relevant. And doing stuff once doesn't have an impact. People say, okay, I wrote a blog once. I didn't get any sales. The reality is you won't. Because how many social media feeds are you scrolling through, and how many people are bombarding you every day? You're not going to remember. You don't care. You also have to build a coherent message. Another big disconnect I see as well, that people aren't doing this effectively. So you have a mandate you set out, and you have to have integrity about the message that you're communicating in the marketplace. Now, for the engineers in the room, there's this fallacy that build it and they will come. That's a lie. No one cares. You have to make them care. There's over 1.6 million technology startups in English-speaking countries that are released every year. So what are you guys going to be able to do about it to set yourself apart? Personal branding is one of them. Now, I said before, you can put your foot on the accelerator and decide how hardcore you want to go with this. Some people are really aggressive and they get going with it. Some people are really scared from it. But it's the ball's in your court and it's really up to you. You also need to communicate the point of difference outwardly. Again, no one cares. Make them care. And how you do that is communicating on social media platforms. Why? Because everyone's on there. CEOs are sitting on Facebook. CEOs are on LinkedIn, Instagram, all those different platforms. And the trust. If you engender trust with your personal brand, and then transitions into your business brand, and people trust that. It doesn't even matter how long you've been in business, but if they trust you as a person, they'll trust your company. The term we use in marketing is flywheel marketing, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. Because once you build your brand, no one can take that away from you. It pays dividends. Paying dividends to me now, a few years down the line, and it does keep giving back to you, because again, people know who you are. Okay. Nail your pitch. I went to an event a few weeks ago. It was people pitching for large sums of money, $60 million and up. And I wasn't sure if they were the CEO. I wasn't really sure what their place was. So know your pitch and own it, and own the stage. Because it makes a difference. If you're asking for money and funding, you have to be really confident, and you have to know exactly what you're talking about, and when you're communicating to people, and talk to them like people. Because the people that you're asking to get the money from are actual people, so you want to humanize and personalize that message. Once you start, I talked about getting your message out there and growing your profile, it'll really reinforce your pitch, which means you have gravity behind you, which is a powerful tool. And people won't question you as much. You've got a big profile. No one's going to sit there and question Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos or any of these people. They've got a big profile. They've got gravity behind them. TechEvents.co is a great resource. So it's an aggregated platform for like Meetup and I think Eventbrite. When I first started building my brand, I went to so many events. I know that everyone has personal commitments in the room, that you can't always go to every single event, but I started there. I built my street cred. Again, I was working in cybersecurity. It's built, that's the other half of my business, is a cybersecurity media company. So I started doing that. People got to know me. And also the benefit was, I was in North Sydney a few months back, a guy recognized me and said, hey, you're the girl that does the videos, can you come and present for Coca-Cola? Which was a big thing for me, because I was just walking down the street, so I'm almost like a walking billboard. Again, your brand transitions out digitally as well. So be mindful. You never know who's around. Work for me. Again, I talked about dividends. Once you start doing this, you actually create compound growth. and your profile will help you in the future. So if you think, oh, it's a sunken cost, and it's time, I get that all the time, it takes time, I couldn't be bothered, I don't watch Netflix on the weekend. If you start investing in it, it will work for you over time. But again, it's a commitment. It's really up to everyone on how much they really want to push it. So some tools. A lot of these are free / quite cheap. So it's just to get you going, get you started, and it's to organise your content as well. I look at content all day. I know people that have a strategy and they're shooting from the hip. The other thing is with that, everyone's got an opinion. Just because you've got an opinion doesn't always mean it's going to work for you. See a lot of people doing a lot of talking, it actually shoots them in the foot a little bit. That's why people come to us, because they know that if they start talking about something, it could potentially be detrimental to their brand. Just be mindful of that when you are talking and you're talking about your company. Yes, you can do it because it's free nowadays on social media, but you have to do it effectively. So I can send this around later. Okay. Stay in your lane. Now, when you're first starting out, the chances are you're going to have no money. Fine. So you've got no money, which means you've got more time. So start building your brand. Then, once you've built the brand because it's paying you dividends, you're going to start accumulating revenue and customers, which means you're going to have money. So when you have money, you find partners to outsource it to. Why? Because if you're a software engineer, you're a data scientist, it doesn't matter. Stay in your lane and do what you do best. See a lot of different founders trying to do everything. You can't. I'm really bad at doing financial stuff, so I have a dedicated firm that does all that stuff for me, because I know my place, and it's definitely not doing financial stuff. I know I'm good at doing this. And I see a lot of founders trying to do so much. So stay in your lane. Don't deviate. I understand that it costs a lot to do marketing and things like that, but you can do it for free. Then, once you start accumulating that, you can transfer it over to a firm to do it for you, because you're not going to have the time. So, I always like things people can take away. So 2 things you can do when you leave the room. Hopefully, they're not too hard. But, LinkedIn. So, if you don't have LinkedIn, I suggest you get it. A lot of people say I have 25 years of experience. No one really cares about that. They care about what you can do for them. A lot of people talk about, and there's certain buzzwords that you can stay clear from as well, because as soon as people see that, from a psychological point of view, they're deterred by that. So I would suggest jumping on your LinkedIn and talking about what actual problems that you're solving for your clients. The second thing is, when writing emails, do it in a personalised way. I have a standard operating procedure now that every email is written with hey, whether I write it or someone else writes it for me. Simply because, dear sir, madam, no one cares about that anymore. It's very informal. It's very formal, and that's not the way people connect with people nowadays. So write your emails like you're talking to a friend. Because I write all of my emails like that, even if it is someone that you don't know. If you just have a little bit of personality in there, you'd be surprised on how much you'll get back. And understanding language is important. Because if you understand that, you'll understand how to connect with people and how to communicate with them. Whether you're doing a sale, you're building a partnership, you're building your own profile, and that's something that's lacking. So I'd also encourage you, if you can, to do a copywriting course. Understand how copy works, what words to not use from a psychological point of view as well. Because again, people use these words, people aren't interested. So I went to an event recently, and this was something that really resonated with me that I took away. It was actually a guy presenting from AWS, and he says, if you really want to be innovative, be prepared for people to tell you how wrong you are and be comfortable with it. The benefit of personal branding is that when I first started, I think a lot of people thought I was a dog walking on my hind legs because they'd never seen something like this before, which I didn't think it was that unique. But again, it's something that I'm bridging that gap. It's never been done before. I've got that background. So by building your profile and your brand, if you are doing something innovative, keep talking about it. Keep communicating it. Just because your vision hasn't been seen yet in the market, it doesn't mean that it won't be. But it's about that continuously talking about it and keep doing what you do best. So you can connect with me. I love meeting new founders because I speak to them all over the world and they're amazing human beings. So if you want to chat to me or have any questions, I'll be around later. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So thank you so much again, Carissa. And I really acknowledge your energy. To me, it's that energy is what's required to break through the noise and make these types of ideas stand out, get heard, and eventually that what it takes to turn these things into reality. So really acknowledge you. Awesome. So guys, we are at the close. To recap, so we talked about quite a few things here today. Number one, if you're interested in being a high-performance individual or a team, I shared with you guys about Ingenesis Thrive, mainly to, number one, if you're interested for yourself, but my hope is that you take this into whatever workplace it is that you're a part of, and we can start to see a change, that things are not wasted, resources are not wasted. We also talked about Aurora. I do want to reiterate that for everyone here, you can get your own free personal being profile done and interpreted, and that one was aurora.io. And finally, the pitching workshop will be, the pitching will happen this afternoon with the judges. And finally, for Carissa, please, feel free to contact us, or we're here after the session for any questions. Join our social media, especially LinkedIn and Facebook, and this is how you can contact us. Outside of that, it's a great privilege again to be with you all here. I hope you got something that, I actually hope you got something that 10 years from now you'll be looking back going, that's the little nugget that we got of something that made a difference to me here today. So outside of that, onwards and upwards, and really look forward to seeing what you guys go out to do from here. Thank you.